What do you say, everybody, with Andrew Bone? It's Mick Gillespie, and it's time for Recruiting with Andrew Bone here on Bama Insider. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. We're going to talk recruiting on here. That's what you guys want to know. What's going on with Alabama? They have the #1 class in the country. Bone's the guru of recruiting. You know that. He's going to tell you the skinny. He's going to let you know the fat, all of it right here with Andrew Bone. But before we get there, hit the bell. That's when you know when we go live here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel that we're live, and you want to be here because you want to hear Bone give you the scoop first, or maybe you want to check out a Nick Saban press conference, or maybe you want to watch the Tailgate Show, or maybe you want to watch whatever, Monday Night Quarterback. We got it all. Kyle's call-in shows, everything right here for you, and all you got to do is hit that bell, give us a thumbs up, and be part of it. Also, right now, before I bring Bone in, I want to remind everyone you're going to get the greatest Bama recruiting information at Bamainsider.com. Now that Bama Insider is part of On3, for $1 a limited time, you get a subscription to Bama Insider for an entire year. You tell me what you can get these days for $1. I don't know. One thing that you're going to get tonight is our man Andrew Bone. What's up, Bone? How you been?
I'm good. You might can get some things for $1 that you want, that you don't want, but I promise you, you want a subscription to Bama Insider for sure.
Maybe somebody will go in the comment section and start, naming things that you can still get for $1. You can't even get a cup of coffee for $1 anymore, right? At Starbucks, they're like just the regular coffee's like $2.60. So.
It's a pretty good deal.
It's a good cup of coffee, though, right? It's a good cup of coffee, but Bama Insider for a year. You and Joseph Hastings, you got the entire On3 network helping cover recruiting. So let's get to it, Bone. Alabama played Utah State last week. It was a 55-0 drumming, and they actually had some really big guests in town.
Yeah, I remember going into the I guess about 2 weeks ago, I was like, man, this is going to be kind of a rough weekend with recruits because there's just not a lot of top guys coming in for a Utah State game. But the good thing is it was a night game in Tuscaloosa at Bryant-Denny Stadium. The lights were on, and a lot of commitments were in town. I thought that was a real positive thing, getting a lot of commitments back on campus. Being around a lot of guys. You had a lot of underclassmen who were in town, a lot of guys who already have offers from Alabama in that 2024 and 2025 recruiting classes. But the big name on campus this past weekend was Jalen Hale, top 100 wide receiver at a Longview High School in Texas. Now, this is one of Alabama's top overall targets, one of the top uncommitted targets who's still out there now. Alabama currently has 2 wide receiver commitments: Cole Adams out of Owasso, Oklahoma, and also Malik Benson, top JUCO player not just the top JUCO wide receiver, the top overall player in junior college, currently committed. But they're still going after a few guys, including Jalen Hale, and this is a guy that has visited Alabama a few times. I think he's been there 3 times now. He visited in late July, and really since that late July visit, there was a lot of buzz about Alabama and how Alabama had really started to even things up with Texas, because going into that visit, Texas was a heavy favorite. I mean, he went to a camp in Orlando, not Orlando, at IMG Academy back in mid-July. I don't want to say he was telling everybody he was committed to Texas, but everybody there was pretty positive that Texas was going to be the school. And he ends up making a trip to Alabama a week and a half later, and there was a lot of buzz with the Crimson Tide. Now, he made it back to Tuscaloosa this past weekend for his official visit. Now, I think this was a great weekend for Alabama to get Hale on campus because, like we said, wasn't really a big weekend for uncommitted guys. He was the only uncommitted 2023 recruit in town and the only official visitor. So think about this. Every single Sunday on these big official visit weekends, you have all these guys over at Coach Saban's house hanging out. They're all posting pictures of riding gators down by the lake, playing basketball, and everybody's going through the buffet line that they have at Coach Saban's house for brunch. The only people there was Jalen Hale and his parents. Spending time with Coach Saban, and obviously some other coaches and some current players were there, but he was the only recruit. So you're getting a lot of one-on-one time with Coach Saban, with the coaching staff, with not just the coaching staff, but the training staff, the support staff. They were able to give him a ton of attention this weekend. And we didn't get a chance to talk to Jalen. He's not really talking much right now, but I did talk to his father, Courtney Hale, after the visit, and he just absolutely raved about the entire trip. It just felt, they felt really at home in Tuscaloosa, had a great time. One thing that really stood out to me was Jalen's formed a pretty good relationship with former Alabama wide receiver Jamison Williams. The two connected back in July when Jalen came into to Tuscaloosa for that visit. JMO wasn't there, but the two FaceTime with each other during that visit. And ever since then, they've remained in contact. And Jamison was back in Tuscaloosa this weekend, so they got a chance to catch up and hang out. So they spent a lot of time. Jalen had a chance to also see a lot of freshmen wide receivers out on the field. And, that's something that, to some people that may signal, oh, they're playing a lot of freshmen. They've got some really good talent that's young. But for Jalen, it was more about, what? They play freshmen at Alabama. Everybody says you don't play at Alabama until your junior year. And, I've heard this. I remember hearing this from a lot of different recruits, but specifically Deron Payne, Minka Fitzpatrick. Those were two guys of, several years ago that they used to say, well, this school or that school, they keep telling me I'm not going to play until my junior year at Alabama. Well, you know what? That's giving me motivation to prove them wrong, because they're basically saying I'm not good enough to play as a freshman. Alabama's telling me I am. I'm going to go to Alabama and prove those other schools wrong. So, I wonder if maybe some schools that Jalen's been, visiting or, that he has in his top group, I wonder if they may have been telling him, hey, you're not going to play at Alabama for a couple of years. I wonder if that's maybe motivated him a little bit throughout this process. But as of right now, I do think Alabama has, potentially moved into the lead for Jalen. Now, he's got a big official visit coming up this weekend to Texas. He's visiting Texas A&M next weekend, and then he's expected to make his decision on September the 21st. Not too concerned about Texas A&M. They really kind of got in on him late. I don't really see them being a factor. I think this is Alabama or Texas. Now, if the Longhorns show something this weekend and make a really strong impression, obviously I think that, they could potentially keep him in state. But I think going into this visit, I think Alabama has the edge. And you see there on the On3 Sports recruiting prediction machine, the RPM, Alabama has overtaken Texas. Now, a lot of that has to do with a couple recent predictions that have shifted in Alabama's favor for Jalen this week. But I'm not ready to log an official prediction just yet. I want to wait and see how things go at Texas this weekend and see how the visit goes, see what happens. But as of right now, I think Alabama is really trending in the right direction for Jalen Hale.
Oh, wow, that sounds good. How significant is that for Alabama? I mean, what kind of talent is Hill? I see he's a 4-star. But how big would that be for the Crimson Tide to get him to commit and eventually sign?
Well, this is a speed guy. I mean, he's got a lot of speed. Great route runner, creates a lot of separation. I mean, he's a big time target. I mean, this is a guy who's also enrolling early, so he's got a chance to come in, get there in January, and really start working. So. We'll see if he ends up in Tuscaloosa, but this is a major target for the Tide. He has been for a long time. He camped at Alabama last summer, and that's when the coaching staff really noticed him. And ever since then, they have been heavily recruiting him. They really have not slowed down recruiting him throughout this whole process. So, they've been on him for over a year, and certainly consider him one of their top overall wide receiver targets in this 2023 class.
It'd be a lot of fun to see if Alabama can win. I mean, look, Texas and Alabama play this week. We're going to get into that rivalry in the recruiting trail and then talk about, kind of the significance between two of the big programs in college football history here in a second. But was there anyone else that you want to talk about that maybe came to town this past week or anything else before we kind of move on to the Texas game?
Yeah, I think, looking back at the overall weekend, Alabama had a lot of, as we said, a lot of underclassmen who were in Tuscaloosa. I think, they had two big offensive linemen in the 2024 and 2025 recruiting classes. The first one, Daniel Calhoun out of Georgia, and one of their top overall line targets. Already has a great relationship with Alabama offensive line coach Eric Wolford. He's also said he's returning for the A&M game next month. And then Mason Short, another Georgia lineman making his way to Tuscaloosa. He's actually in the 2025 recruiting class, and he already has an offer. And there's not a lot of 2025 guys who have the ability to commit to programs just yet, but Mason Short is certainly on that short list of guys who could potentially commit because Alabama really likes him a lot. But getting a lot of commitments back on campus, I thought was huge. You had Perry Thompson in that 2020. You had all 2024 commitments in town. Perry Thompson, Jalen Mbakwe, Montravius Collins, and then you had a lot of your 2023 commitments also in town. I thought the biggest visitor that made his way back to Tuscaloosa was Tony Mitchell, the five-star safety out of Thompson. Tony was supposed to visit Alabama in late July for the cookout, but instead went over to Texas A&M. He came out and said that he was still solid with Alabama after that trip. We know Tony as far as he loves Alabama. He loves getting down to Tuscaloosa for games. He's even though he wasn't committed yet, he went to about 5 or 6 home games last year at Alabama. So I expect he'll be at most of the home games this fall. So I think getting him back on campus, all of Alabama's in-state commitments were in town this weekend, with the lone exception of Jahil Hurley. He didn't make it to Tuscaloosa, but everybody else was there. So getting those guys around Jalen Hale and maybe some of these other 2024 recruits, I thought was always a big benefit for the Tide. So we'll see a lot of other guys back in town in the coming weeks. Guys who weren't able to make it this past weekend. Justice Haynes, Caleb Downs. Those are 2 guys who went over to the Georgia Oregon game this past weekend, but they'll be in Tuscaloosa for the A&M game. We can also expect Alabama's 2 quarterbacks to make it up to Tuscaloosa a lot this fall. And I thought, one of the big out-of-state guys who visited Alabama this past weekend was the top junior college linebacker in the country, Justin Jefferson. And I had a chance to talk to Justin on Sunday after the visit. And he said, even though other schools like Florida and Mississippi State and Ole Miss are certainly coming after him still and certainly putting a big emphasis on trying to get him in for a visit, he says he's not visiting anywhere else. He's 100% locked in with his commitment to Alabama. Is not going to take any more visits. So good to get Justin Jefferson back in town, and not the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver once again. This is Justin Jefferson, top JUCO linebacker in the country out of Pearl River Community College by way of Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, there you go. Pearl River, one of my favorite spots over there at the casino. Guys, as you hang out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel, part of On 3, like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, hit the bell. That way you know when we go live. We love having you guys here, part of the biggest, most powerful college sports channel on YouTube, and you guys have made it. We appreciate you more than you know. So tell your friends, share. We're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. We want to have as many subscribers as Alabama has fans at Bryant-Denny Stadium when they play home games. So that's what our goal is, and we want to get 500 likes. I also want to remind you, too, I'm beating this because I want you to take advantage of it. $1 gets you 12 months of Bamainsider.com. Take advantage of it. You got Bone and you got Joseph Hastings. They're killing the recruiting trail. They're going to let you know everything that's going on with recruiting all the way up until signing day. And then after, you've got Jimmy Stein and Clint Lamb covering Alabama in the message board. That message board is so much fun. You can get in there. You can talk and cut up. Kyle Henderson on there as well, doing stuff for Alabama. So do it right now. $1 for 12 months. Give us 12 months, a year to see what you think. If you don't like it at the end of the 12 months, you can get out of it. But it's pretty much free. So just take advantage of it and see what you think, and maybe it'll be something that you really like and you really appreciate. All right, Bone. Look, earlier today on our News and Notes show, Jay Barker and I had Trent Richardson on, and I thought about you because Trent Richardson started talking about how he wanted to go to Texas. They didn't have enough spots for him. And that's why he ended up at Alabama. And he said that the touchdown run that he had in the game against the Longhorns was his favorite. It was the most important run of his career. He had 2 touchdowns in that game, but he had that long breakaway run that led Alabama to a national championship. The last time Alabama and Texas played, it was the first time Alabama had ever beaten Texas. And the recruiting battles that have gone on between these two teams have really heated up. That at that point in time, Texas just didn't have a spot. They didn't think that he was worth a spot, and he ended up at Alabama. Crazy.
I mean, yeah, Trent never told me that story about Texas. I mean, we've talked about Florida and LSU and some of these other schools, but I don't know if he ever told me about Texas. A funny thing about that that trip to California for that game, I'll never forget when Trent scored that touchdown. I mean, it's pretty wild, and you're there as kind of the first time. I mean, I remember the Alabama-Miami 1992 national championship, but I didn't go. I mean, this was my first national championship
Me too.
that I got to attend. And so there's a lot of excitement. Of course, there's a lot of, boozing before the game. So you're trying to have a good time. And I'll never forget, I was at this tailgate and I met Derek Lassick. This is Derek Lassick wouldn't even remember me, but I remember meeting him at this tailgate that we were hanging out at and talking and meeting and whatever. So we go to the game. And I'll never forget. I came out of the game. I'm walking down, going to our little tailgate or whatever, and this guy jumps on my back, and like screaming like "Yeah!" And I turned around. It was Derek Lassick, and I was like. Yeah, this is awesome. I thought it was the coolest thing at the time because obviously from the 1992 national championship, and I was just like, this guy doesn't even know me really, and I know him really well, and he's on my back riding me out of the stadium. So that's what I remember. That's basically all I remember from the Alabama-Texas game back in 2009. So that was a good experience. But Alabama and Texas have had some interesting recruiting battles over the course of the last few years. It's starting to pick up even more. Alabama went out to Texas a couple of years ago. I guess it was 2 years ago, and signed 7 I think of the top 15 overall players from Texas. I mean, that was just a really a beat down on the recruiting trail for Alabama. I wouldn't say they've had as much success, but they, continue to go out there, continue to recruit. Alabama can recruit any spot in the country, and even though Coach Sark and that staff that he's assembled, they do a great job. They have the number 5 recruiting class in the country right now, and they've picked up some obviously some big names, from in-state and out of state. But Alabama's not going to slow down recruiting in the state of Texas. I mean, you look at 2 guys that they were able to flip over the last 2 years, Jalen Milroe, who was committed to Texas, and then Jamarion Miller, who was also committed to the Longhorns last year. Alabama was able to get both of those guys, and there's still some guys that they're heavily recruiting in this class. Now, obviously, the big name is Arch Manning. We know that Art's committed to Texas, but Alabama has 2 quarterbacks that they're excited about, Eli Holstein and Dylan Lonergan. I think there's obviously some other really good players that are committed that they're still going after a little bit, including Malik Muhammad, one of the top defensive backs in the country, number 2 overall cornerback in the country, and he's going to visit Alabama at some point this fall. He hasn't said when, but says that he's going to make it to Tuscaloosa for an official visit. So we know that Alabama is continuing to recruit Malik Muhammad. Another guy that he likes Texas a little bit. He says he's going to visit Alabama this fall is David Hicks, the 5-star defensive lineman out of Texas. This is a guy that most people think he's going to end up at Oklahoma. Texas A&M's on that short list as well. Alabama and Texas are probably fighting for that number 5 or number 6 spot right now. I don't see Alabama getting either or Texas getting David Hicks. But one really intriguing prospect that's going to be visiting Texas this weekend is the number 1 tight end in the country, Duce Robinson. Now, Duce is a guy who has visited Alabama a couple times now. Alabama, USC, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, all on that short list for him. He's going to visit Alabama for the Texas A&M game and come in for an official visit. So he's going to see Alabama twice over the course of the next month. So we'll kind of see what happens with him. I don't really feel like Alabama is going to be the choice, but stranger things have happened, and I think Alabama's going to have at least a chance with them being able to get Duce on campus here in the next couple. I guess is that 3 weeks away, 4 weeks? Yeah, so they'll have a chance there, and he's going to see obviously a great atmosphere this weekend in Austin. And Jalen Hale, as we mentioned earlier, I mean, this is going to be the weekend that probably decides his recruitment. Does Texas potentially keep it close with Alabama? Do they show a lot on offense that really excites him and makes him want to stay in state, or does Alabama just continue to go out there and dominate on the road? And we saw what Alabama's new look offense did the other night, especially with the receivers going off. So I'm sure he enjoyed seeing all the receivers score touchdowns. I mean, I think we had or Alabama had 5 touchdown passes, 6 touchdown passes in the game. So it's certainly something that sticks out to him, because he one thing that Jalen has said in the past, Alabama, it doesn't matter who the coordinator is. They continue to develop wide receivers year after year after year, and continue to put guys in the first round of the NFL draft. And that's something that he wants. I think Texas is obviously trying to get there. They're not there yet. I do think Xavier Worthy is a pretty special talent at receiver for the Longhorns. But, you continue to see, 3-4 wide receivers that continue to produce year after year at Alabama, and I think that's something that really sticks out to him. So those are some of the bigger names that Alabama, Texas is going after right now in this 2023 class. I went a little bit more in depth on it on Bamainsider. We have a recruiting battle story, Alabama versus Texas, on Bamainsider right now. So I encourage you all to go check that out, and also check out our recruiting nuggets. I just posted earlier today a ton of recruiting nuggets, really a lot of updates on guys who are going to be coming in for visits over the course of the next month and a half. Kelby Collins, Cormani McClain, David Hobbs, Sharif Denson, Jaron Hamilton. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. We kind of update everybody on where things stand with those guys, when they're coming in to visit, and how they're feeling after some of these visits, because there were a lot of big visits throughout the entire country this past weekend. Obviously, Alabama had a couple guys in town, but you look over at Florida. Florida had a lot of recruits in town for the Utah game. There were recruits over in Atlanta for the Georgia-Oregon game. Keon Keeley, Damon Wilson, 2 of Alabama's top edge targets. They were up in Columbus for the Ohio State Notre Dame game. A lot of people saw the photo with Keon Keeley and LeBron James. So Ohio State certainly brought out a lot of stars for that event. Auburn had a couple top recruits on campus. Quay Russo, James Smith, 2 in-state 5-stars. They were both at Auburn this past weekend. So when are all these guys coming to Tuscaloosa? We got it on Bamainsider.com right now.
Yeah, very interesting. And I was curious about this, Bone. When Arch Manning decided to go to Texas and not Alabama, that was one of those recruiting battles that didn't go the Crimson Tide's way. How did that affect the rest of the recruiting, or how has it affect Texas's recruiting, in particular against Alabama, but against everyone?
Well, they're doing well. I mean, you look at Texas's recruiting class right now; they have the top 5 recruiting class in the country. I think that they've certainly added some. It's hard to say if they would not have added those guys if Arch, went elsewhere. If he would have gone to Georgia, if he would have gone to Alabama, because a lot of those kids that have committed to Texas over the course of the last month and a half, 2 months, a lot of those guys are in-state kids for the Longhorns, like Jonte Cook. Top 100 wide receiver, Malik Muhammad, number 2 cornerback in the country. Now, they did go into Louisiana and get 5-star safety Derek Williams. Maybe that had a little bit of help, but in the end, I just think the kids are still going to make their own decision. They're not going to make a decision based on where somebody else is going, because you still got to decide what's best for your future, not what's best for yours and Arch Manning's future together, because you just never know what's going to happen. What if Arch Manning ends up transferring after a year? I mean, you look at a guy like Quinn Ewers, who's at Texas now. I mean, there were so many kids that were talking about playing with him at Ohio State and going to Ohio State and playing with him. He didn't start his freshman year. He transfers, goes to Texas. I mean, I just don't see why anybody would commit to a school based on somebody else, especially a guy that, I get it if it's like a teammate of yours and you want to keep that tradition going and be with your best friend or whatever, but to go to a place where you not really that good of friends with somebody, you just know them through the recruiting process. I think it's in my opinion, I think you still need to make your own decision. Yeah, it's great having those type of guys there, but in the end, you got to go to the school that best suits you.
He's Andrew Bone. I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Recruiting with Andrew Bone. We do this every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. You get the hot scoop on everything going on in the world of Alabama recruiting. And if you want to follow Bone, you want to get his work, you can do that. And you can do it 24/7 at Bamainsider.com. And right now you can get Bamainsider.com really easy and cheap, $1 for an entire year now that Bama Insider is with On3. Talking Alabama and Texas and recruiting battles. Yeah, I remember you mentioned it before. There was that year where Alabama just went in there and swept away all of the players that they wanted from Texas. And Alabama going to Austin, Alabama playing Texas A&M now that they're in the SEC, and soon Texas will be in there as well. Hotbed of recruiting. Has there been an uptick in Texas players coming to Alabama since Texas A&M came into the conference, or was Alabama always a big player in the Longhorn State?
Yeah, I mean, they've always been kind of, I wouldn't say a big player. They've gone out there and they've been able to land some top recruits from the state of Texas. Whether it's Jalen Waddle, DeAndrew White, and Damian Square. They've been able to go out to Texas and land some recruits prior to that, and they're going to continue to recruit because it's obviously a hotbed for talent. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there. There's coaches on this staff who have connections in Texas. I think that they're going to add a couple big names from the state of Texas in this class. You got two guys who are going to be announcing decisions in the next couple of weeks, with Jalen Hale announcing on September 21st. As of right now, I would lean towards Alabama. Jordan Renaud, defensive end out of Tyler, Texas. Originally from Florida, but we'll call him a Texas guy for now since he's in Tyler. But I think Alabama's in pretty good shape with Renaud. He is taking an official visit to Oklahoma this weekend. He's going to announce on the 19th. So can Alabama, hold off the Longhorns, hold off the Sooners this weekend? We'll wait and see. But could be a couple good weeks coming up for the Crimson Tide in the state of Texas.
Awesome. All right, Bone, before we bid everyone farewell on this edition of Recruiting with Andrew Bone, any important visitors that you want to tell us about coming in the near weeks?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be guys that are going to be making their way to Tuscaloosa. Ola Salinan, who is an Alabama commitment, he's actually going to be attending Alabama's next home game. It's going to be the only game he's going to be able to attend throughout the entire season. Bryce Thornton, who's a 4-star safety out of Georgia, he's actually going to be making his way to Tuscaloosa for the Alabama Vanderbilt game. There's going to be a lot of top recruits in town for that Texas A&M game. I think everybody's kind of holding out to make their way to that one. Of course, Alabama's going to have to really dial back who they give tickets to, because there's guys from all across the country that will be coming in. You're probably going to see some guys that we haven't even been talking about as Alabama recruits who are going to be calling the coaches up all of a sudden and say, "Hey, I'm interested. Can I come to the Texas A&M game?" We'll see if Alabama gives those guys tickets, but we're going to see a lot of high-end guys in Tuscaloosa here in the next couple weeks, and obviously we'll have it covered. We already actually have a visitor list on Bamainsider.com on the message board. So if you go to Bama Insider, get on the Talk Champions. You all, like Nick's been saying all night, All you got to do is sign up for $1. You get a year subscription. So all this stuff that we're talking about, it's all on there. It's only $1 for an entire year. Now, if it's not something you want to do next year, you can cancel. That's okay. But go on there, get the visitor list, get the in-depth analysis, get the recruiting scoop. Like I said earlier, we dropped a ton of recruiting nuggets earlier today. So sign up for $1. Go get it. That deal is ending very, very soon. So I want you guys to go get it before it's all over. I don't want you guys to pay $100 in the next couple of weeks. I want you to pay $1 right now. Go sign up. Bamainsider.com.
This is the deal that when you miss it, someone else goes, "Yeah, I just found that out on Bama Insider."
Somebody's going to go on and say, you know what? I should have signed up a week ago or yesterday because it was only $1. Now it's $100. I still want to get the scoop, so I guess I'm going to pay that $100. I'm telling you guys, go pay that $1 right now. It's about to end. You go sign up for $1. You can come and talk to me on Bama Insider right now. I'm going over to the message board right now, answering questions all night long. We got a Q&A session that's going to start up first thing in the morning, and we got an interview with Kavion Henderson from Leeds High School. He just received an offer from Alabama a few days ago. Like I said, we got the recruiting nuggets, Alabama, Texas recruiting battles. Joseph Hastings, who also covers basketball recruiting for Bama Insider. So I know there's some basketball fans out there. We got basketball content on there every single week from Joseph. So come on, join Bamainsider.com and hang out with us all day, every day.
All right, Bone. Well, was there anything that I didn't get to that you want to talk about before we close up shop tonight?
No, I missed last week. I know there were some fans that were
good to have you back.
So good to be back. Good to be healthy. Good to be back in the saddle again. I appreciate you doing the show, Mick. And most people don't know, we got another guy behind the scenes. Chris does a great job. So Chris, we appreciate you and appreciate all the fans for tuning in and watching the show tonight, and obviously the ones who will go back and watch the replay throughout the next couple of days.
Well, look, if you didn't get enough, Bone, he told you that he's going to be on the message board tomorrow talking recruiting. And
I'm on there tonight.
He's on there tonight. He's going there right now. And the other thing is that Friday, you can watch the tailgate show, the Bama Insider tailgate show, or you can listen to it statewide in Alabama on Saturday. We'll have Bone on there. Bone's been on the show. I don't even know how many years, Bone. I mean, it's got to be at least 7 years, right? Would you say at least 7 years?
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. Yeah. So we got a lot more Bone coming your way, but follow him on Twitter at Andrew J. Bone. It's a great follow. He's always right on the cutting edge of anything going on Alabama recruiting, and more great stuff again tonight. Thank you, Bone.
Thank you.
All right, guys, don't forget Kyle Henderson will be doing his weekly call-in show tomorrow night. Make sure you watch that right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Anything Nick Saban, we're going to have it on the channel as well. All of his press conferences. Jay and I will be on Thursday at 2 o'clock. Who knows? We had Trent Richardson on Tuesday. Maybe we pull another rabbit out of our hat on Thursday as we get you ready for Alabama and Texas. It's pretty cool talking to a guy that quarterbacked the team to a national championship, and Jay Barker. He wrote the foreword in your book, Bone. So it's good hanging out with him. But most importantly, it's good hanging out with all of you guys. We appreciate all of you that watched and all of you guys in the comment section. Hey, appreciate it so much. Like, subscribe, be part of this channel. All it's doing is going straight up, and we want you to be there as we continue to do that. Hit the like button. That's a great way when you give us a thumbs up of saying Roll Tide, and hit the bell so you know when we go live, you get a notification. Hey, the guys are on. I wonder what's going on. And, if something's breaking, we're going to be on here as well. So anytime something's going on, you're going to want to be a part of it. And last but not least, Bama Insider on the On3 network, Bamainsider.com. You can join $1 for an entire year. And Bone said it. You better take advantage of it right now, or you're going to miss that opportunity. Great work behind the scenes, Chris Daughtry. Thanks to Kyle Henderson for helping us get this thing together. And for you, Andrew Bone, I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for watching Recruiting with Bone. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Until then, let's beat Texas. Roll Tide.